Yeah, and we're back. Woo! Yesterday, I'll just tell you, yesterday I wasn't in school. Oh, you already know that though. But I wasn't in school yesterday because I went to go get the first dose of the vaccine at the Rowan site, mega site, whatever it is. And I got the shot around like 11 o'clock. And since then, like I was fine for like a couple hours, but then like since then, I just got like super tired, and my arm right now is like throbbing right here. Oh, it feels warm now. That's weird. Anyway, yeah, they tell me that getting the second shot is going to be a little bit worse, but I don't know. We'll see what happens because I'm going to be getting the second shot in like 2 weeks, so we'll see. But I may be like a little, I don't know. I feel off. I don't know if that's going to come across, but I'm just going to tell you right now, I feel kind of off, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. For those of you in the live stream, if you would please, as a couple have already done that, thank you so much. Leave a comment in the chat. That'd be fantastic. We'll kind of get this thing moving. And then I'll tell you how today is going to run. Actually, not today and probably a little bit of next week as well. So first, I would like to go over at least one of the questions from the homework assignment that I had posted that I extended for all of you. That was the weighted voting homework. I would like to review at least the first question in regards to that, because I'm not going to be obviously extending that anymore. But then afterwards, I do have some practice with Shapley-Shubik that I would like to get done. I do have a very, not intense, but like interesting Shapley-Shubik type problem. I don't want to do much more than that other than review this particular chapter. Because, believe it or not, this is actually the end of chapter 2. And I am aiming for a major assessment. So I want you guys to be aware of that. I'm going to basically treat today like it were a review day, where I'm going to be focusing in on the Banzhaf and Shapley-Shubik and the different types of distinctions and definitions that people could be within a weighted voting system. Today being a review day, I am going to be soon assigning you a major assessment in regards to this particular chapter. It's a short chapter. The next chapter is going to be a bit more extensive, but I don't want to give that away just yet. And I feel really bad because, man, the next chapter is something called fair division. And I usually, in that chapter, do stuff with Skittles. But I can't do that this year because that would mean, I'd be passing out Skittles to people. And I can't do that in this environment. Obviously, no, I mean, besides the fact there's only 2 people, but that's not the point. I can't do most of the stuff that I want to do, which involves like getting up and moving around and do things. I want to punch all of these little dividers in the face if they had a face. Anyway, so if you would, now I'm not going to ask for those notebooks just yet, but I am going to suggest that if you do want to write down some information on this, that's up to you. But the first thing that I would like to do is I would like to review that first question, just the first question from the homework assignment that I gave you guys. Again, just a reminder for those of you in the chat, if you have not left a comment, please make sure that you do so. That would be fantastic. While I bring up the PDF of this particular assignment, because this is what I would like to review first and foremost. And again, reviewing in preparation for a major. Come on, thing. There we go. And flip the screen. And there we go. This is the weighted system that they gave you on the first problem on the homework. And I'm going to write that down just so I have that written down. Here we go. So this is just, again, I'm not officially calling for notebooks, but I am going to be giving this a little bit of a title here. There we go. Review. Let's see here. And the system is 8, 5, 3, 1, 1, 1. Boom. Oh, just for a fun fact for all of you, because Nicole, you would get this because you were in Prob Stat, and Patrick, you would get this because you're in AP Stat. But do you know what yesterday was? It was Derek's birthday. Derek! Oh, Derek. Anyway, back to this. I miss that guy. So this is what I've written down so far. Cool. And this particular problem, they want us to figure out the Banzhaf power index. And the way that they set this up, on the worksheet was kind of nice. They organized it in such a way where they gave you the opportunity to write down 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, and 5-player coalitions. And then I wanted the Banzhaf power distribution for all players. Now, obviously, I don't have that type of I'm frozen. I don't have that type of organizational system printed out right now, and that's fine. I can do that on paper. But the general idea would be systematically trying to figure out, okay, how in the world do we meet a quota of 8? We need to meet that quota of 8. There are 5 players that are voting in this system. Player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And players 3, 4, and 5 all have the same weight. Let's see what happens. Now, I usually start with a 5-player system, or I'm not just a 5-player system, but I start with everybody all voting the same way, because this is a winning coalition. That is definitely a winning coalition. I like to go through this systematically so that I don't miss anything. If I go through it systematically and knock out every winning coalition, it's much easier to make sure that I haven't missed anything. This adds up to 11 votes. 8, 9, 10, 11. Good. But we need to identify who is critical. Now, on this particular worksheet, I'm going to flip back to the worksheet real quick. Ba-boom. On this particular worksheet, they didn't give you a column or a section for who is the critical player. But in the directions on that particular page, they said to list only the winning coalitions and their weights in the table below. You will not use every space. Then it says to circle or underline the critical players in each winning coalition. Circle or underline the critical players. Now, you could totally do that here. I'm just going to write them separately. Crit. There we go. Let's see. It adds up to 11. Is it 1 and 2? Actually, it's not 2. You know why? Yeah, and if you meet the quota, that's good enough. Yeah, just player 1 in this case. Yeah, player 1 would drop them to 6. Player 2 would drop them to 8, which still meets that quota, meets the minimum threshold for passing something. Oh, crazy days. Now, what's interesting about this, before I start listing out these coalitions, what's really interesting about this is that players 1 and 2 by themselves would meet the quota. Players 1 and 2 by themselves would meet the quota, which may or may not make this a little bit more icky. That's the technical term. Now, I've done a 5-person coalition. Again, I want to do this systematically, so I'm going to go down to a 4-person coalition. Let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4 right off the bat, because I know that they will definitely meet the quota, in this case of 10. I wonder, will player 1 always end up being critical? I think that's definitely a possibility. I won't know until I get to the end, but I'm fairly confident that player 1 is always going to end up being critical. Who else is critical, though? In this particular instance. Yeah, player 2 is. This time they are. Because if you take away player 2, you drop down to 7. Players 3, 4, 5 basically would all fall into the same boat, but that's 1, 1, 1. Like, no, that would drop down to 9, 9, and 9 meets the quota. Okay. Now, again, this is where it gets a little dicey. Because we've done players 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I'm going to do players 1, 2, 3, 5. Now, it may seem silly to write this out because it's basically going to be a repeat of what just happened in the previous coalition. 10 votes, player 1 and player 2. But you need to write that down. Because in the end, when you are doing this Banzhaf power index, you need to find all possible critical players. And this is definitely a possible voting block. Now, again, I just want to point this out in terms of going through it systematically. I started out with the 5-player coalition, and now I'm at the 4-player coalition. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's a 4-player coalition. But then I replaced player 4 with player 5. Now that I've kind of exhausted that because I've got to the end of the players, now I'm going to backtrack a little bit to player 3, and now I'm going to change player 3. I'm going to change him to player 4, and then work my way down again systematically and see if I can't get these winning coalitions. Again, it may seem silly. Player 1, player 2, player 4, player 5 still adds up to 10. Still gives you players 1 and 2 as the critical players. That's okay, because I need to know this is a distinct possibility. This is a distinct winning coalition. This is what makes calculating Banzhaf for the Electoral College so difficult, because you actually have to list out all of the winning coalitions, which is incredibly difficult to do by hand. Incredibly difficult. There are lists online. They've had computers do it. But that's besides the point. Now that I've done 1, 2, 4, 5, that kind of exhausts player 4 in this spot. I got to go back to player 2. I think I can find a winning coalition by putting a player 3 here. Oh, yeah, totally. Look at that. Player 1, player 3, player 4, player 5. What's that add up to? What does that add up to? Player 1, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that meets it. Player 2, sucks to be you. Now, this one, you don't have to think too hard about critical players. You don't have to think too hard about critical players, because if the vote total is exactly the quota, then everybody's critical. If the vote total is exactly the quota, then everybody's critical. Player 1, player 3, player 4, player 5. I'm pretty sure at this point I have exhausted my 4-player coalitions. 4-player coalitions. Because again, I went through it systematically. There's no way, there is no possible way you could have a winning coalition without player 1. There's no way you can have a winning coalition without player 1, because everybody else adds up to 6. Now, that's actually very interesting. What the heck do you call player 1 if you can't win without him? What do you call player 1, or what do you say player 1 has if you can't win the vote without him? Dictator. Nope. A dictator. A dictator means that they have 100% of the power. A dictator means he would be able to pass anything on his own without anyone's consent. but he needs people to agree with him. What's less than a dictator?
Veto power.
You got veto power. Yeah. Player one can block whatever he wants. He can't pass whatever he wants, but he can block whatever he wants. And because of that, he has veto power. Again, if we were going to do veto power, I would say, okay, player one is 5 versus everyone else, which adds up to 6. Well, 6 doesn't do it. They can't pass anything without him. Player one has veto power, but not a dictator. And the way you know he's not a dictator, by definition, is, well, other people have power here. Other people are critical. If player one was the only critical player, then yes, he'd be a dictator. Now, I'm not done yet with this problem. I'm not done with this problem because I still have to go through 3-player coalitions and 2-player coalitions. But can you answer me? What is this? Veto power. I'll talk about, oh, she asked the question about veto power. Oh, no. Were you answering the question, veto power? I don't know if she was or not. I'll let her figure that out. But where's it going with this? Right. Do we, at this moment, do we know whether or not we have any dummies? Do we know whether or not we have any dummies?
No.
Why? At some point or another, everybody's critical. Yeah, no dummies. Just by definition. A dummy would never be critical. A dummy would never be critical. Yes, she was answering. Sorry, I didn't realize that, but thank you. Yay. You put the question. I don't know. There's a delay in my head today. Anyway, I forgot I left my glasses over there. Woo! Walking over here. You know what I love? When Wawa has those limited blends. Nobody? All right. You know what they had yesterday? They had cinnamon roll. No one's excited? Y'all are weirdos. Anyway. Moving up. It's okay. You don't have to drink coffee. Let's go 3-player coalition. I got to do a 3-player coalition. So, player 1, 2, and 3. Let's just start there. Player 1, player 2, player 3. Going through it systematically adds up to 9. And hopefully it's very easy to see players 1 and 2 are critical here. Player 3 is not. Players 1 and 2 can pass pretty much anything on their own if they agreed. If they disagree, player 1 still has a way of passing things. That was actually, no, that was one of the 4-player coalitions. But anyway. Now, again, systematically, I did players 1, 2, and 3. Now I'll do players 1, 2, and 4, which also add up to 9, which also give players 1 and 2 critical properties. Again, systematically, now we'll do players 1, 2, and 5, which add up to 9, players 1 and 2 critical. Now, again, this is a 3-person coalition. I have exhausted all instances of players 1 and 2. Hopefully, by looking at this weighted system up here, you can recognize the fact that there are no more 3-player coalitions. Because you can't do players 1, 3, and 4. That only adds up to 7. Every 3-player coalition, according to the system, needs to have players 1 and 2. So we're done with 3-player coalitions.
Just can we do 1 and then 3, 4, 5?
That was right there. Exactly. Here's the thing. Absolutely yes. And if you at the very beginning of the problem, and this actually is strategy. So let me zoom out a little bit and talk about this. What I'm doing right here is a little bit of a strategy. Yes, you could totally recognize that at the beginning. For those of you in the chat, what she said was, couldn't you you don't need player 2. Technically, you could do player 1, 3, 4, and 5. Yes, absolutely yes. But the thing is, like, I kind of turn my brain off a little bit, and I'm like, okay, instead of actually determining it like randomly, that's what I meant about the systematic system. Systematic system? It's not even a phrase. The systematic way in which I list out these things. So I know that if I do this in such a systematic way, cha-cha, I know that eventually I'd have it right there. That system without player two. Player two. Thinking you're so, California or something. I don't know. Haha. You guys ever see the show Designated Survivor? You've heard of it? My wife and I are about to finish season 2. I don't know, this whole voting thing has kind of gotten in my head, and I was thinking about Designated Survivor. It's a pretty good show. You ever watch 24? No? All right. Kiefer Sutherland, same guy. It's a good show. Anyway, 2-player coalitions. It's just players 1 and 2. They add up to 8, and they're both critical. Players 1 and 2 clearly are very critical throughout this entire system. But it seems that player 1 has more power. And by going through the Banzaf power distribution, you can see that. There are, and again, I'm going to have to count these up. These are a little bit weird here now. I'm going to have to move my paper while I do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There are 19 instances. 19 instances of a critical player. Let me just double check that. I don't want to make a mistake on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miscount because 19 sounds like a weird number. Yeah, and because I went through this systematically, I started with the 5 players. There's only one 5-player coalition. And then the 4-player coalitions. Players 1 and 2 can pretty much pass anything they want on their own. That last 4-player coalition, the 3-player coalitions, and then the 2-player coalition. Yeah, just double checking my work. So everything's out of 19. There are 19 instances of critical players. Let me count out player 1. Player 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Player 1 is 9 out of 19. Such a weird number, but that's the way that the system works out. 9 divided by 19 gives us about 47.4%. Player 1 has about 47% of the power. Again, by definition, only a dictator would have 100%. Only a dictator would have 100%. Player 1 has less than 50% power. Veto power doesn't have a number. And I did want to talk about this a little bit more. I said before that player 1 has veto power because they can't pass anything without player 1. If somebody has veto power, that means nothing. That means nothing for what their percentage would actually be. I mean, yeah, their percentage will actually be a bit higher than everyone else's, but there's no like hard and fast number of like, oh, it's got to be 50% or oh, it's got to be 75%. No. In order to determine whether or not someone has veto power, you compare that one person's weight versus the total of everyone else's. And we can tell right at the beginning that player 1 has veto power because player 1 has a weight of 5 and everyone else has a weight of 6, which does not meet the quota. And as a result, boom, player 1 has veto power. Player 2 almost had veto power. Player 2 almost had veto power, but did not. And this is the system that proves it right here. This system of voting right here, this player 1, 3, 4, 5, proves that player 2 does not have veto power. because player 2 is not critical in that instant. Sucks to be player 2. Also, the fact that player 1 was critical in every single instance. Back up here. Let's see, player 2. Player 2 was critical in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 19. That was player 2, which is approximately 36.8%. Player 3 was critical. Twice in the first system. Say what now?
Player 2, you only missed one though, right?
Player 2 missed it here and up here. Yeah. Because remember, you even pointed out that one system, the four-person system where player 2 is not needed. This one right here. But then up here, check this out. All 5. If you remove player 2, they go down to 8, which still meets the quota. Player 2 is not critical in that first system. Do you know here's a good check for you. Ready? A good check for you. After we figure out all 5 players, their fractions should all total up to a whole. Once we get to the end, all of their fractions should total up to one whole, 19 out of 19. Let's see if we got it, though. Player 3 was only critical 1 out of 19. 1 out of 19, but still something. 5.3%. And I'm pretty sure players 4 and 5 are the same thing. Player 4 is also 1 out of 19, which is 5.3%. And player 5 is 1 out of 19, which is 5.3%. Let me just double check this. 1 and 1 and 1 and 7 and 9. Yep, it adds up to 19. All of those fractions should add up to 19 out of 19, or the percentages should add up to 100%. Oh, happy day. Now, again, what's nice about this is just figuring out how much power each individual voting block has. You know, when it comes to the Electoral College, which the Electoral College is a weighted voting system. When it comes to the Electoral College, a lot of people say, oh, but California and Texas and New York and Florida, they have all the power. And then someone would argue, no, it's these smaller states that have the power because, you know, they do some weird thing with like the population. They try to figure out, okay, one person's vote weighs this much or something like that. It's an interesting system because, yes, California does have a lot of power in regards to voting, but Wyoming does have some power. See if I can find it, actually. There was a chart in here at some point. There it is. Page 80. Here we go. Excellent. So check this out. I'll try to show you as best I can because this spans a couple of pages. Let me zoom in on this. This is a little hard to see. Let's see if I can put that there. There we go. It's a little hard to see, but this was for the years 2000 through 2010. So obviously it's changed since then. This has changed since then. But a state like California, a court has 10% of the electoral votes, but according to the Banzhaf Power Index, has 11.4% of the power. Now that's actually really interesting to me. California has 10.2% of the electoral votes, but according to the way that the voted system works out, has 11.4% of the power. But then you have something like Alaska. Alaska has about a 0.5%. They have 0.5% of the power, or of the electoral votes, but they have 0.5% power according to Banzaf. Oh, that's so weird. Shapley-Shubik would be a bit different, I guess, in terms of, because of the order in which they vote. Ugh. Where's New Jersey? Let me look up New Jersey. The thing that this doesn't take into account is the fact that there are some states that do split their votes. There's New Jersey right there. At the time of this, New Jersey had 15 electoral votes, but that has changed. New Jersey now only has about 14. We have 2.7% of the votes and 2.7% of the power. Weird. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Sorry, I was just looking at New York. New York, about 5% of the power. California has the most power. California has over 10% of the power. That's so crazy. Okay. I want to talk about a Shapley-Shubik. What is this? I just got an email saying that they're asking for Mr. Bengal nominations. I didn't realize they were still going to be doing stuff like that. I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. When they do Mr. Bengal, someone's going to be Mr. Virtual. Just saying. I'm calling it right now. Anyway, back to this. Okay. I have one more big problem that I want to try. And it has to do with Shapley-Shubik. So, again, I'm putting this into my notes. So, talk about Shapley-Shubik. So, Shapley-Shubik. And the system in question is this. And I kind of leave that there for a moment. Now, again, in terms of reviewing Shapley-Shubik is assuming that everyone is voting in a certain order, a sequential order. And the order in which they go up to place their vote, or the order in which they submit their vote, makes all the difference in the world in terms of determining who has the most power. Which person or which voter is the pivotal voter that will put them over the quota. Again, that's like election night all over again. With election night, again, you don't know when these states are going to be called. Some will be called early, some will be called late. But eventually, there will be a state that puts the electoral total over 270. I mean, unless, of course, it's this past year's election, in which I think that, are there people still fighting the vote? I don't really keep up with it. I hope not. Like, come on, dude. It's done. Anyway, whatever. Back to this. So I have this system. This system has 3 players. And I purposefully chose 3 players with what I want to do with it, because I actually want to do 3 different things with it. If you notice the quota, I left the quota as Q. And I did that for a very distinctive reason. Because we are going to compare the Shapley-Shubik power that each player has depending on what the quota is. So I may end up changing what that quota is. And I'm going to say, oh, the quota has to be this, or the quota has to be that. And then we can determine who has the power. Now, there are... Okay, well, let me ask you this. What is the absolute minimum that the quota can be? What is the absolute minimum that the quota can be? Minimum? That's the maximum. That's the maximum to what the quota can be. What's the minimum? Well, that's the thing. Can't be 1. According to any type of weighted voting system, it's got to be 50% plus 1. Or 50% up to the next whole number. Well, tell me this. You said 9 before. Why? You added them all up, right? Cut it in half. 4.5, but we can't have a half a vote. Yeah. That's the minimum. Now, I just want to write a couple of pieces of information for myself just for later on. I see you, Sydney. She commented. I just saw her comment. Just imagine me giving you a virtual high five. So, minimum quota is 5. However, there's a bit of an issue. We can't make the quota 5. We could make the quota 5. We totally could. And that would be perfectly fine within the system of voting. However, if we made the quota of 5, what unbelievable major thing will happen as a result? Sorry, I just saw her. She went for the high five. All right. If we make the quota 5, what will happen? Ooh, something huge. Something icky. Something we kind of want to avoid in this country. Yeah, well, player 1. But yes, it'll make him a dictator. Yeah, it would totally make him a dictator. Because if you have the quota at 5, the other 2 players, they can't compete. They can't compete at all. Sorry, oops. Can't do it. So, just to kind of point that out. It would make player 1 a dictator. It would make player 1 a dictator. Can't do it. I mean, we could do it, but that would be a silly system to agree to. Why would someone agree to that? Ha 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 ha. Here's the other thing. If you wanted to, you could make the quota 9. You could totally make the quota 9. But then the weights mean nothing. If you make the quota 9, then the weights mean nothing, and it's pretty much 1 vote, 1 person. Because if you make the quota 9, there's only 1 winning coalition. All 3 players. Can't do it. I mean, you could do it, but you don't want to do it. So, we want to make this quota something a bit more manageable. So, let's make the quota 6. And after we make the quota 6, I want to compare it to a different quota. So let's make quota equal to 6. Let's make the quota equal to 6. Now, I'm doing Shapley-Shubik. And since I'm doing Shapley-Shubik, I have to list out all possible orders. With Shapley-Shubik, you're talking about what they call sequential order. So, I'm going to have to list out player 1, player 2, player 3. Player 1, player 3, player 2. Player 2, player 1, player 3. Player 2, player 3, player 1. Move that up a bit. There we go. Player 3, player 1, player 2. And player 3, player 2, player 1. Shapley-Shubik can be a little bit tedious because you actually have to list out all of the sequential possibilities, which we're only going to do this one more time with a different quota. We're only going to do this one more time with a different quota. Well, let's just see what happens. Now, just to kind of go back to the homework that you guys had to do for me before I finish this problem, if you scroll down in the homework, I actually gave you on that homework a system of 4 players, but I made sure that all of the possible orders were already listed for you, because I don't think that's very fair for you to have to figure out all of those possible sequential orders. That's not what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you how to determine the Shapley-Shubik power index. So, yes, all of them were listed for you in this for this problem on the homework, and then I say, hey, what's the power index? Back to this. So, the quota is 6. The quota is 6. All right, you got to add up to 6. I'm pointing now. 5 and 3 make 8. So, player 2 is pivotal. A pivotal player is what puts you over the quota. All right. Player 1, player 3, that adds up to 6. Good job, player 3. Player 2, player 1, oh, that gives you 8. That meets the quota. Player 2, player 3, that only adds up to 4. Player 1 puts you over the quota. 3, and then player 1, oh, that meets 6. That meets the quota. And then player 3, player 2, nope, that adds up to 4. And then player 1 will now meet the quota. It's all about when will they meet the quota? At what instance will they pass over the minimum quota? So, let's see here. Player 1 is critical 4 out of 6. Player 2 was critical 1 out of 6. And player 3 was critical 1 out of 6. Now, I want to do this problem one more time, but I want to change the quota. I want to do this problem one more time, but I want to change the quota. Now, like I said, if you make the quota 5, which we're not gonna, if you make the quota 5, player 1's a dictator. If you make the quota 9, which means everybody has to vote for it or it doesn't pass, meaning it has to be unanimous. If you make the quota equal to the maximum quota, then it's pretty much one player, one vote. And everybody has equal power. If you make the quota 9, it would be 33%, 33%, 33%. So I'm not going to do that. I want to make the quota 8. I want to make the quota an 8. And let's see what happens if we make the quota 8. So we're going to do this system one more time with a quota of 8. So now, let's let the quota equal 8. I'm going to have to list out those sequential orders one more time. Player 1, player 2, player 3. Player 1, player 3, player 2. Player 2, player 1, player 3. Player 2, player 3, player 1. Player 3, player 1, player 2. But to throw this marker across the room. Player 3, player 2, player 1. This marker is dying on me. Let's throw it across the room. Ugh. Oh, that's a terrible throw. And now my arm hurts even more. I shouldn't have done that. That was a terrible mistake. For those of you in the live stream, my arm is throbbing right now because I got the vaccine shot yesterday. Ugh, goodness gracious. I have like no arm strength whatsoever. I'm just rewriting these just because they came up a little bit light. So if the quota is 8, I'm going to go through it one more time, knowing that the system is 8, 5, 3, 1. There we go. That's the system right there, the weighted system. Player 1, player 2. Player 2 meets it. Player 1, player 3. Haven't done it yet. Player 2. Player 2, player 1. There we go. We met it. Player 2, player 3. Only adds up to 4. You need player 1. Player 3, player 1. Only adds up to 6. You need player 2. Player 3, player 2. Only adds up to 4. You need player 1. Oh, snap. In this system, what did we discover? In this system, what did we discover? Oh, sorry. Player 1, player 2 definitely have veto power. They definitely have veto power if the quota is 8. If the quota is 8. What else did we discover?
Player 3 is empty power.
Yeah, player 3 has no power. Player 3 has no power whatsoever, according to Shapley-Shubik. Dummy. It's a dummy. See, the thing is, it's the same voting system that we had before. It's the exact same voting system, except we changed the quota. When the quota was 6, player 1 had all the power. Not all the power, I should say. Had most of the power, but everybody had power. When you change it to 8, all of a sudden player 3 loses all power. But, and I just want to reiterate this, we go from 6 where everybody has some power to 8 where player 3 loses all power. Remind me one more time, what happens when we put the quota up to 9? No, that's at the minimum of 5. When we put the quota to the maximum at 9. Equal power. If you put the quota up to 9, everybody has 33% of the vote. It's just weird because you could change the quota and you could change the dynamic of how people are voting. It is insane. I love it so much. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up there. I know I'm a little early. But I am going to wrap it up there. So a couple of announcements just moving forward. I'm a little bit behind in terms of getting things graded, especially since I was out yesterday. I missed opportunities for that, but I'm going to hopefully try to catch up on some grading today, especially during second period and fourth period, but that's besides the point. I am going to be throwing in a major assessment at you in regards to weighted voting systems, Banzaf, Shapley-Shubik, dictators, dummies, that whole thing. Actually, let me ask you one question. I want to put a system up on the board. Where's my thing? Here we go. Just as one extra little thing here, just because I want to see it happen. Let me see here. What if? Here we go. And hopefully, yeah, those in the chat can see it. Look at this up here. Remember we were talking about the minimum votes, the minimum quota? This system right here. Be very careful. What is the minimum quota for this system right here? I'm going to leave that hanging in the air for a moment. What is the minimum quota for this system right here? There are 3 players. I agree. What's their vote total up to? What's the minimum quota? Can't be 5. Because if it were 5, you could split it 50-50 and you don't know what to do. The minimum quota has to be 50% plus 1. 50% plus 1. So remember we had 4.5 earlier, but you can't have 4.5, so it had to go up to 5. But 50% would be exactly 5. You can't have exactly 50%, so you got to bump it up to 6. You got to bump it up to 6. I see that you put a 7, but it should have been a 6. That's why, think about the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate, it could end up 50-50 for those of you who are, history buffs. If the Senate votes 50-50 and it splits, who's the tiebreaker? Yeah. Did you know that that's actually the only official duty of the vice president? Yeah, the only official duty. I say official because obviously the vice president could have other duties assigned by the president and other people and stuff like that, But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to wrap it up here. I know we got about 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, but I'm going to wrap it up on the live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the live stream. If you have not left a comment, because I see the 3 different people have left comments, but we'll see what happens. We'll kind of get this thing moving. If you have any questions, email me. I'm going to be assigning that major assessment probably. I'm either going to assign it on Friday, but if I assign it on Friday, it won't be due Monday. I'll probably have it due like Tuesday or something, or I might assign it Monday. And if I assign it on Monday, then I'll have it due on Wednesday. You'll have enough time to get it done. But anyway, we'll see you then. I'm gonna sign off, and that'll be the end of that. Chapeau. There we go.